It's as if they've just normalized the final solution approach to conflict. It's like they wanted to outdo Hitler, demonstrate how to properly punish the whole group for the actions of a few. Donald Trump is currently making more anti-Semitic moves than Ye. Ye just wrote a song. Okay. Welcome to another episode of Political Newbie. I'm Noah Clark, a formerly ignorant average citizen who's simply trying to make sense of the mess, and I thank you for joining me. Has there ever been a week wilder than the one we're coming out from? Anything crazier than the song Ye just dropped? And does it come as a surprise to anyone that a song with zero explicit violence towards any group has been ubiquitously deplatformed? Yeah, when the Zionist ex-Senator Norman Cole said that the Jews are masters of the universe when it comes to the media, he was being anti-Semitic, but he was not kidding. Oh no. In fact, I'm pretty sure you'll find millions of really explicit violent songs towards women, gays, blacks, whites, everyone really, because none of these groups are protected enough for those millions of songs to be utterly and completely scrubbed off the internet for some reason. Maybe for freedom of speech reasons. I don't know. If you made it this far, I'd love to see you in the comments. If not, leave a thumbs up and let me know that you were here. Thank you so much. But if the Zionists are pushing to make it illegal for us to say out loud that Zionists control the media because their argument is they don't, then how else can we make sense of why no other group is as protected by the media? Anyway, here is yet another instance where they are relying on outdated tactics to control the youth, without realizing that the youth will be even more encouraged to get this song in their ears and in their minds and will most likely like it, even if they want to hate it. Honestly, the Zionists should have consulted the psychologist Jordan Peterson on this one before pulling a stupid dinosaur move like that. But that is nothing compared to how insane and twisted the world has gotten in the last 7 days. As we all know, anti-Semitism took a sharp rise recently that just happened to coincide with the aftermath of October 7th, as the definitions of anti-Semitism keeps expanding arbitrarily. Wearing a keffiyeh suddenly became anti-Semitic in the past 18 months, saying pro-Palestine is suddenly anti-Semitic, and now they want to add neocon to the list. So Steve Witkoff is in an interview recently saying this: the neocon element believes that war is the only way to solve things. And POTUS believes that his force of personality, the way that he's going to respond to situations, can bend people to do things in a much better way. So controversial. Ooh. And Mark Levin decided he needed to correct us. And he responds, by the way, neocon is a prerogative for Jew. I think he meant pejorative, but anyway. And he goes, unbelievable that sane people would even consider trying to solve a conflict without dropping bombs. I'm new here, okay, but can somebody tell me if the Zionists always been this transparent about their bellicose and psychopathic fragility? Does everything we say have to be illegal? And no, this is not funny, because people are being beaten up in the streets by police officers for wearing keffiyehs. People are being snatched away by masked men for posting op-eds, and I'm sure, in many cases, people's lives are being irrevocably ruined as they fight for their and our freedoms. Up until about a week ago, you could be arrested and at risk for deportation for writing anti-Semitic op-eds. In a college paper, no less. But here's a guy, Thomas Friedman, exercising his freedom of speech to post a super anti-Semitic op-ed in one of the largest publications in the world, the New York Times. Headline: this Israeli government is not our ally. Wait, okay. I just realized that this is not that anti-Semitic because he qualified it with this Israeli government. Okay, so it's not that anti-Semitic. Okay, fine. But you know what else I discovered last week? Not only did Israel murder almost every journalist reporting out of Gaza, but the Knesset passed a law this January, just a couple of months ago, making it illegal for anyone, including Israeli reporters, to say anything that doesn't line up with the state narrative. So much for democracy. They're desperately clawing to rewrite history right before our eyes. And if they're willing to do it while every single one of us is paying attention, what were they doing when we weren't? And for how long? For those of us who were born in the late 80s and onward, is this what a fascist takeover looks like? The police are given orders and they just blindly obey? Beating up defenseless people in the street and dragging them off into detainment? Is this what it looks like when the Nazis did it? And let me remind you, okay, these police officers that are beating up people in the street for saying things like what Thomas Friedman wrote in the New York Times are our dads, our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, our friends, our fellow citizens. Madness. So last week, kept getting crazier. Donald Trump is currently making more anti-Semitic moves than Ye. Ye just wrote a song. Donald Trump is in the throes of a massive tantrum, making some backstabbing maneuvers around our greatest ally. This is the latest from the Jerusalem Post. Donald Trump to announce U.S. recognizes Palestinian state. What? Bibi just announced its plan to send 60,000 troops into Gaza, deporting the remaining Palestinian survivors and annexing the territory. So there's no way that this is real, right? This is definitely a psyop. I mean, yes, it is true that the Zionists genuinely despised Trump for a very long time because he's not as pliant and submissive to their psychopathy as our last presidents were after JFK. But he's psychopathic enough to gain their trust. The Adelsons put their faith in him, didn't they? Okay, all right, sure, not without handlers. Trump is surrounded by double agents, Rubio, Cotton, Wiles, Graham, about 90% of Congress, really. I mean, imagine my surprise when I discovered last week that we have representatives who actually wear another country's military uniform to conduct official American government business. And we allow it. Yeah. Here's Congressman Brian Mast. Brian Mast served with the foreign military and wore his IDF uniform in our Capitol building as a congressman, saying he will always stand with Israel. So cringe. So cringe. I mean, will anyone ever write a script about this? And will we ever see it in Hollywood? Because what in the flying world is going on? I mean, imagine a Russian politician conducting official Russian business in China's military gear. I don't know if this is normal, but I feel very embarrassed for my country. So yes, Donald Trump and every U.S. president post-JFK has been and is surrounded by double agents. And I don't know if it's because our presidents are Zionists. Donald Trump certainly is. So they keep these Zionist loyalists surround them, or because our presidents have no choice in the matter. What was really interesting is that a huge chunk of the Zionist crowd went silent after all that Trump dumped Bibi news started dropping. Many of them flocking to a specific channel for emotional support because they hang on every single word this influencer / podcaster says. His name is Tusi. Listen to this.
Well, we have some breaking news coming from the relationship between the United States and the Middle East in general. And I can say, everybody, breathe, because President Trump is not selling out. A lot of people assumed that President Trump is now suddenly selling out. He's betrayed Israel. He's abandoned Israel. And he's going to be recognizing a Palestinian state. Same rumors that went around about the US-Iran negotiation. Then we realized, actually, I've got some confirmation on that as well, that Steve Witkoff, the US negotiator, is not selling out either, as far as we know.
Did you hear that little bit? As far as we know.
He's not selling out either, as far as we know.
He said it under his breath. But it's like, these are the kinds of little tiny things that you have to pay attention to. Let's listen to the rest of it.
But this is actually about the so-called Palestinian state, which has never existed and has never been a thing. There was another rumor that came out in the media that President Trump has also abandoned Netanyahu and Israel. And there was a whole thing about the Abraham Accords. Now, all that has now been debunked by the White House directly.
Debunked by the White House directly. I'm not going to play the entire podcast episode for you, but I'm going to let you know that in the entire podcast episode, he does not give any physical proof that the White House debunked it, but he does give this proof that the White House debunked it, and this is it. Listen.
So the White House administration have now clarified their position in a very White House fashion. The US ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, said, Jerusalem Post needs better sources than this unidentified so-called source. My 4-year-old grandson Teddy is more reliable. And take it from Teddy. This report is nonsense. Israel doesn't have a better friend than the President of the United States, POTUS. Now, because Mike Huckabee is quite sound, and actually I met him a couple of weeks ago in Jerusalem.
Yes, he met him a couple of weeks in Jerusalem because he's right. A couple of weeks before this episode dropped, he was doing a propaganda tour in Jerusalem, and they treat him really, really well over there. I mean, he does a really good job, honestly. But when Donald Trump announced last week that he pretty much worked out a ceasefire deal with Yemen behind Bibi's back that did not include Israel, Tusi, this guy, immediately dropped an episode about the Houthis surrendering to the US and Israel. Like, well, yes, and he qualified it with, as far as we know. Like, if you hear that, it means that he's probably BSing you. Just if you're a Zionist and you're here and you hear this guy, he's probably BSing you, honestly, because he was wrong about that. Yemen did not surrender to the US and Israel. He just kind of spin things for you. Meanwhile, while he's spinning, things are heating up. Israel has just threatened to respond with unilateral actions following reports that President Trump and other world leaders may move to recognize Palestinian statehood. What? Come on. I want to hear what this guy's spin is on this now. But he keeps getting it wrong, you know? Anyway, if you want a comedic spin on current events, he's a great person to check out. He's really good at Hasbara. Now, do I believe that Trump is turning his back on Bibi? Not fully, but mostly. Yeah, I do. Because I did mention in one of my previous episodes, this one right here, that if you're a person who defends Sam Harris type logic and morals, you're a person who will stab anybody in the back without flinching. And I think we're all noticing that you cannot trust Zionists. Zionists can't trust Zionists. It's simply impossible to have real standards if you support the logic and morals of people like Douglas Murray. 15 million Christians and 15 million Jews could be wiped off the face of the earth, and it would be a mere tragedy compared to the end of the earth if 15 million Jews were wiped off. Or if you support Sam Harris's logic and morals, Hunter Biden having corpses of dead children in his basement is far more acceptable than an anti-Semite, which he believes Donald Trump to be. Not even genociding and systematically starving a population is worse than anti-Semitism. This is Zionist logic and morals. The kind that will devour their own in order to win. So yes, they will backstab anybody. And guess what Zionist Donald Trump is doing right now? Ostensibly backstabbing the shit out of Bibi Netanyahu. Last week, he did something so anti-Semitically pro-Hamas that you're gonna fall off your chair, I swear it. He said that the Houthis were brave. Now, I would like to add that they're even honorable, okay? They were the only ones to stand up to Israel and started blocking Israeli ships when Israel was using starvation as a weapon. But of course, when the US jumped in and started bombing and killing Yemeni civilians, Yemen returned fire. But Yemen told them from the jump, our beef isn't with you, it's just with Israel. So after discovering once again how resilient the Houthis are and how clumsy US pilots can be after the second military plane fell off the USS Truman, $176 million flushed down the Red Sea, the US decided to side with the brave and honorable, abandoning the savage and deranged. When was the last time we did that? The US. Because it seems to me that we're always backing ruthless dictators and tearing down democratic regimes. It's the strangest thing, really, it is. All right, let's back up. Why on earth would Donald Trump commit anti-Semitic acts of this magnitude? Is he insane? No other president has even dreamed of being so anti-Semitic because JFK served his purpose as a deterrent. So why would Donald Trump, with a White House full of IDF uniform-wearing double agents, be fafoing right now? Fafoing means fucking around and finding out. And nothing good happens when you fafo. Gen Zs will tell you. It just doesn't seem smart to me at all. Like, I don't think anyone told Donald Trump that there are bartenders in the US that are casually destroying American citizens' lives for far less anti-Semitic acts. Like posting IG stories of their friends waving an F the Jews sign. A kid lost his job, college expelled him, private information got leaked on the internet, which I believe is illegal, and if it isn't, it should be. Where are these people getting his private information, his private text messages and audio recordings? Okay. Meanwhile, a random white woman is being celebrated and funded for calling a child the N-word, and a black young man is being celebrated and funding for fatally sticking a knife into an unarmed young man and calling it self-defense. Any of these people getting fired or expelled or doxxed? Yeah. Anti-Semitism is so much more vile than racism that even Jews themselves are not allowed to be critical of Israel, which, if you forgot, is now anti-Semitic. I know it's hard to keep up when the definitions keep morphing, but if you don't keep up and you forget, you can easily end up in a Louisiana detention center. And we can all be certain that new definitions are right around the corner because anti-Semitism is now an art form. It can be anything and everything. It's abstract. My point is, you don't joke around with anti-Semitism. So why would Donald Trump agree to go to Saudi Arabia after Saudi Arabia made it clear that normalization with Israel is off the table until Palestine is recognized as a state? Wasn't this why Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th? Because the Arab countries were about to settle this normalization process without the Palestinians? So why would Donald Trump do something so pro-Hamas? And ignoring all the Libya-style nuclear deal rhetoric that Bibi kept going on and on about. But you know what? The media always comes in clutch when Israel needs backup. This is how desperate the situation is, okay? Fox News conveniently aired new discovered intelligence that Iran actually had a secret nuclear facility this entire time that is probably producing weapons of mass destruction. Listen to this.
Fox News exclusive satellite images revealing the location of a previously unknown Iranian nuclear site. Now, the facility spans nearly 2,500 acres, and this is a big discovery. Jillian Turner has more from the State Department. Good morning, Jillian.
Pretty explosive, Dana. These satellite images that we have obtained exclusively show the alleged site location and even the layout of the secret, previously unknown nuclear weapons facilities inside Iran, and it spans nearly 2,500 acres. It's been operating, as far as we can discern, for over a decade under the cover of a chemical production company that's called Diba Energy Siba.
Isn't the U.S. position that Iran can have an enrichment program as long as it doesn't reach a weapons?
We haven't made that decision yet. We will, but we haven't made that decision yet.
Did they say a decade? A decade? Really? They're just discovering it? Whoa. This is why I respect Scott Ritter so much, because he called out the intelligence community on its BS back in the 90s when they pulled a similar move about Iraq. And we all know how that turned out. Yeah. Old tactics. Instead of practicing a shred of humility and honesty, they are clinging on to their old style of narrative control through lies and manipulation. Maybe this is part of the plan. I don't know. Maybe they want us to turn our backs on Israel. Here is the Israeli prime minister being almost as anti-Semitic as Donald Trump.
I will say it. The real enemy that we have is not Iran, which is an enemy. It's not Hezbollah, which is an enemy. It's not Hamas, which is an enemy. The real enemy is from within. The messianic, crazy, extreme groups of Israelis that think that they can kick out the Palestinians and annex their territories. I'm fighting against them. I'm campaigning against them. And I think that this is incumbent upon the Israeli government and Netanyahu. Unfortunately, Netanyahu depends on them politically to the extent that he closes his eyes and he allows them to do things which are totally intolerable and unacceptable.
Now, Israel came out and pretty much said that Donald Trump better not make a deal with Saudi Arabia that Israel isn't happy with because they will block it in the Senate. Excuse me? What now? 1 minute they're saying that they're masters of the universe, and the next minute they're declaring ownership of our Senate? Okay, I don't know if Bibi Netanyahu got the memo, but here is Bibi like almost 30 years ago.
אנחנו הולכים למסלול התנגשות עם הממשל האמריקאי. ארצות הברית זה לא מקשה אחת, זה לא מקשה אחת. יש את הסנאט, יש את הקונגרס, יש את הכוח היהודי שהוא עצום, יותר חזק משהיה אי פעם. יש דעת קהל, יש לנו כוחות כבירים בדעת הקהל שמתנגדים למדיניות הזאת, גדולי הפרשנים. אמריקה לא תכפה עלינו דבר.
America won't force us into anything. I mean, well, he has been right about that, so he's not wrong. But, you know, when Bibi said this in the 1980s, it wasn't quite anti-Semitic to say that Jews or Zionists control our government. But it is now. And his position still hasn't changed. If he ever sets foot back on American soil, Rubio better not play around and deport him for such a vile anti-Semitism. Okay? We got to keep Rubio to his word now. I don't know. I find it weird that all of this anti-Semitism is like really spiking, even with Donald Trump, the week that Ye dropped his new song. Isn't that weird? It's like they're all working together somehow. Strange week last week. Meanwhile, the most important update of all is that Israel is still dropping bombs on civilian markets in Gaza, targeting the last remaining stores of food, while they continue to have aid trucks at a standstill in the hot sun. Bibi did announce plans last week to have boots on the ground to distribute what would amount to a dribble of aid to the population, but it seems that Donald Trump's recent stroke of madness is throwing a wrench in that plan. Apparently, the new plan is that the U.S. will be coordinating the distribution of food and humanitarian aid to Gaza, but even that is pretty shady. The plan seems to revolve around establishing something like an aid post in Rafah to get the population funneled into that location and offer aid to people who want to leave Gaza permanently, which is so dark. My next episode will have more on this because I am freaked out by some of the information and some of the updates coming out about this. Sometimes I get a little panic attacks at how different reality is from the history that we were taught in our textbooks, and that everyone parrots with 100% certainty as if they think that it's not possible that our governments would lie to us. It's definitely not a good feeling knowing that I've been lulled for so long by the mainstream media that I had no idea that civilized human beings could be so disgusting and savage that they'd live stream themselves bragging about sniping children for fun. After we've learned about Leopold II, Nanjing, Hitler, the Bolsheviks, even if half of those stories were fabricated by the victors who wrote the history, we still believed a certain level of savagery existed, and the point was to learn from it, to not repeat those mistakes. Let me make one thing abundantly clear before I continue. Zionists call what Trump is doing anti-Semitism. They insist on conflating the terms and dragging the Jewish people down with them. I call what Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister are doing anti-Zionism. One of the most tragic things about the rise of anti-Zionism around the world is that Jews are being swept up in it. As a black woman, I don't want to be lumped into the same group as some of the terrible black actors out there who are out of control. I don't want white people to be lumped into the same group as some of the terrible white actors out there who are out of control. So I fully empathize with the Jewish people who are being used as human shields by Zionists. It actually is heartbreaking. I discovered a letter written by an Israeli young woman that offers a glimpse into what conditioning youth into humans that would live stream themselves gleefully executing a genocide against unarmed people looks like on a granular scale. I'll put a link in the description to the full letter, and I urge everybody to go read it. It's a little long, and it's journal entry style. But here are a few snippets from that letter. I was exactly like them, just like those people around me that I've been so repelled by in recent years. For 20 years of my life, I believed the script that had been echoed to me my whole life, the well-known script that said I was Jewish, Israeli, part of the chosen people, that God had selected me above all others, that I was the daughter of a king, that my life had greater value than those who weren't as fortunate as me. This is what I was taught from the moment I could listen, from the moment I could write. This is what I wrote in my notebooks, in assignments, in exams, in all kinds of religious studies. I learned about the Ishmaelites, the Canaanites, the Jebusites, and the Hittites. And of course, I was taught to make the comparison, because supposedly, the ancient Girgashites are today's Arabs. Those same Arabs who stole my promised land, who want to kill me and take my land, but God promised me this land, and God will return it to me. And we will defeat this dangerous people, and one day, when the temple is rebuilt, the nation of barbarians will become my slaves. During times of rocket sirens, like in Operation Cast Lead, Gaza War 2009, when we didn't go to school, I'd stay home with my mom or visit a family that didn't live in the South. And there, I'd constantly hear about how these dangerous Arabs from Gaza wanted to kill me, that they wanted to annihilate me. And that's why we had to defend ourselves. We had to attack them. It was just self-defense, because if we didn't, they'd kill us all. They're dangerous. They're not human. They're not like us. They have no soul. For some reason, I only ever heard about what was happening on our side. The sirens, the rocket hits, the casualties, the children who didn't get to go to school, the poor heroic soldiers who fell defending me. I never knew what was happening on the other side of the fence, and I never thought to ask. Then I got my first draft notice, age 16. Even though I knew I could easily get an exemption, because I came from a religious home and had studied in Beit Yaakov most of my life, I decided I wanted to enlist, like most of my friends from school. No way I wouldn't. Luckily, I ended up not being able to enlist for medical and personal reasons, and I hated myself for it. I remembered the day I got my exemption from the rabbinate. I went to my aunt's grave afterward and broke down crying. Quote, "Why can't I contribute to my country? Why can't I be like everyone else?" Close quote. A few months later, I was exposed to the brutal murder of Ayad al-Halak. I especially remember the Shadows, Israeli right-wing influencer, reaction on social media. I was so angry and heartbroken, and I texted my best friend at the time. Open quotes. Cops sprayed bullets at a young guy with autism just because he was Arab and acting a little weird due to his disability. And everyone's calling him a terrorist. Even the shadow guy, with all his influence, is calling his mother a terrorist. And so many Israelis support him, I can't believe it. What a disgrace. I work with people like him. Half the people I serve are in his position. But nothing like this would happen to them because they're not Arab and they don't live in East Jerusalem. And there, something inside me broke. From what I remember, that was the moment the first crack opened between us. Suddenly, I realized we saw reality in such a different way. She's talking about her and her friend. How could it be that my best friend for years could justify such a brutal murder of a person with special needs? And why am I even surprised? I know how much admiration and compassion she has for IDF soldiers. I myself used to join her in arguments defending Elor Azaria. So reading this letter, I realized how much we've all been lied to. And so I think it's really important to always remind each other not to conflate Judaism with Zionism, because it's not about Judaism. It's about a supremacist ideology that's causing us to rot from the inside out. Here's a man, George Galloway, a leftist British politician debating Zionists on a campus, and listen to how he counters the pathetic attempts of Zionists to discredit his opposition to apartheid with the implication that disagreeing with their position is automatically racist.
My question for you is, are you a racist?
But what kind of people would applaud that? Am I a racist? You've sat through the last hour and a half of me speaking, and you're applauding someone asking me if I'm a racist? What kind of people are you? Or do you just applaud anything? Would you just applaud anything? You made a better job of it than your friend. Talking to me in a language I don't understand and then waving an Israeli flag in my face was not, I suspect, the finest moment that he will experience in what I hope is a long life in public affairs. I'll let you in on something you don't know. I'm one of the few people on the left in Britain who travelled the length and breadth of apartheid South Africa as an underground agent of the African National Congress led by Nelson Mandela, then in Pollsmoor prison in Cape Town. Therefore, the subject of apartheid is particularly important to me. The question of racism is particularly important to me. And in parenthesis, let me tell you this, that throughout the entirety of my time underground in South Africa under apartheid, every house I slept in, every dinner I ate, every car I drove in was provided by Jewish activists of the African National Congress. So Jews don't have to be on the side of apartheid. They don't have to be on the side of racism. Jewish heroes amongst my blood brotherhood, like Dennis Goldberg, who served 27 years on Robben Island in Pollsmoor prison, but who never was able to touch Mandela and his comrades because they were on one side of the apartheid prison wall, and he and a few other Jewish heroes of the African National Congress were on the other. Jews don't have to be on the side of apartheid. And I say to those who imagine that they are friends of the state whose flag was just waved in my face. Turn away from the racist apartheid ideology of Zionism. Turn back to where Jews were before the emergence and the hegemony of Zionism. The greatest people on the earth were Jews. None of them believed that as Jews they should go and take somebody else's country and drive millions of them around the world as refugees. All of them would have turned their back against such an ideology. Because of the decades that I worked against apartheid in South Africa, do you imagine that I would turn up at a university and debate apartheid with a supporter from South Africa of the apartheid system? I'd rather punch him in the face than debate with him. Why? Because apartheid is a racist poison. It is the worst kind of fascism. Why should I debate with a supporter of Israeli apartheid?
Okay, yes, that's what we're talking about. This guy puts it really in perspective because you're always going to have, in any group of people, one side supporting one thing. So just like during the Civil Rights Movement, we had Jews supporting black people, and we had Jews who were just as racist as everybody else, right? And same thing with apartheid, and same thing now. We have Jews who are supporting Palestinians, and we have Jews who are supporting apartheid in Israel. Here's a Zionist Israeli who was equally as fanatic about wiping out the Gazans off the face of the earth, who decided to review the facts of the current situation and come to his own conclusion, not the indoctrinated version that he'd been surrounded by. What he discovered was not only was he lied to by his state, but Bibi and the settlers do not represent him. He was interviewed on Owen Jones recently, and I encourage everyone to go watch that interview. I will have a link to it in my description. But I really cannot imagine how Jews must feel right now that such savagery is being done in their name with impunity. I think about if I were in that position, where the world associated me with every savage or brutal thing that any group of black people were doing or have done. And they're such a small group, so it must also be very isolating because most of their Jewish peers are probably Zionists. So here's one courageous woman who showed up in my feed recently, and I'm sure everybody has seen her. I saw these cops are always like patting her down, just very invasive, very violating. She's always getting pulled and yanked by cops all over the place, and but she's just relentless and brave and inspiring. Listen to her.
And this issue of making everything be about anti-Semitism. You know, I am Jewish, just like many of the people you have on your show, like Max Blumenthal. And I see that the number one issue that is creating anti-Semitism is the genocide in Gaza. And that if the U.S. only stopped supporting Israel, we would see a tremendous decrease in anti-Semitism, not only in the United States, but all over the world. And yet you can't even say that in Congress. They won't listen to you. And they've had about maybe 12 hearings or more on this issue of anti-Semitism. In fact, there's a movie that Congress members are showing tonight in the Capitol Visitor Center about anti-Semitism. There's another hearing this week on it. It is constant. You wonder how they can get any work done when all of these hearings are about anti-Semitism on the campus. And as you know, Judge, the ones who really need the help on the campuses are the students who have been protesting the genocide.
Right.
Are Muslim students who you know have been whisked away in the middle of the night and put in detention centers, and they're the ones that need the help, and yet there's not one hearing that is focused on them.
Now that Code Pink woman is a straight up hero. Like, she really does not, at her age, does not have to be out there on the streets getting pushed around and shoved by police officers and being bullied by her peers. But she's relentless and she never stops, and neither should any of us. And all the Jews around the world who are marching, writing, speaking in defense of the colonized and oppressed at their own expense. Heroes. Can I also shout out another hero who is rejecting colonialism and imperialism, that practice that breeds apartheid? Ibrahim Traore. My heart is literally bursting for this African hero. Ibrahim preaches and practices the kind of morality and logic that I can stand behind. Ibrahim is the antithesis of imperialism, globalism, and Zionism. He's putting his people first and leading with respect and integrity without exploiting and dehumanizing other populations of people. We definitely need more plot twists right now. We need Donald Trump and Traore to become fast friends out of nowhere, just all of a sudden. Okay? So he dropped a message recently, which I think is really relevant to what everyone's going through right now. Take a listen.
Through communication, they managed to rewrite history. And as for African history, they schemed everything to spread lies. As a result, some young Africans don't even know the history of Africa or what Africa has accomplished. Some don't even know that our grandparents fought, were put on the front lines as cannon fodder. And when they returned, they were killed like animals. My biggest regret is having spent a good part of my youth listening to radio stations like RFI and France 24. I've been in countries where those radio stations were shut down, but we would use apps to record their news broadcasts so we could listen. But at some point, something clicked. I started to realize that they were conditioning our minds to accept what they wanted. It's their narrative that they want us to learn. And since then, I've started to see things for what they are, and I understood that what they're doing is very dangerous. And today, more than ever, I realize that they have conditioned the minds, especially of Africans. I think they themselves contributed to diminishing their own influence because they have a paternalistic view of our relationship. And if you listen to Western media, they spend all their time lying. And look today, the AES, which is a model that's starting to take shape, they can't go a single day without talking about Burkina or the AES. It's impossible for them. And every time they try to spread information, to divide, to manipulate the youth. But it doesn't work anymore. I think people are aware enough. Now people have their eyes open.
Another man speaking for all of us. Like, it's not working anymore, okay? And it's like I said, they cannot help themselves. They just keep harping on, hanging on to these old tactics of lying and manipulating. I mean, try honesty. Maybe honesty might work. Just come out and tell us, like, we want to dominate you. We want to plunder and exploit you. And we don't want you to be successful. That would be something different. And I don't know, maybe people would respond to it better than what you're doing right now because it's not working. So all of this makes me think about what Wallace Shawn said, a Jewish actor, about the World War II Holocaust compared to the one happening right now. Listen to this guy. I mean, I could not have said this better myself.
You can't be more evil than what they're doing. They are doing evil that is just as great as what the Nazis did, and in some ways it's worse because they kind of boast about it.
Right.
Hitler had the decency to try to keep it secret.
Right.
For some reason, Hitler didn't want people to know he was doing these things to the Jews. It was a secret. The Israelis are almost proud of it and don't keep it a secret. And it's demonically evil.
Demonically evil. Again, another person speaking for all of us. Just so it's clear how psychopathic this army is, 2 journalists were killed during World War I. Between 66 to 69 journalists were killed during World War II. As of May 7th, 2023, over 200 journalists have been murdered in Gaza by Israel. That's more than the number of journalists killed in the First and Second Wars combined in less time. And they started targeting and murdering journalists in October of 2023. This wasn't an accident. This was planned. Over 1,000 doctors and medical workers were murdered. About 38,000 children are orphaned. The death toll is around 40,000, and that's lowballing it, and climbing, with 40 to 45% of the death being kids and babies. It's as if they've just normalized the final solution approach to conflict. It's like they wanted to outdo Hitler, demonstrate how to properly punish the whole group for the actions of a few. Here's what Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said in August of last year. Might be justified and moral to cause 2 million Gazans to die of hunger, but the world won't let us. Aw, Smotrich. Here's what the population in Israel said 2 days ago. Knesset debate reveals not everyone thinks starving Gazan children is a bad thing. They still think that. Okay. For the people who boldly and shamelessly support this, who are out there shouting things like, I hope you get R-worded by Hamas, because yes, there are women out there yelling for other women to be R-worded, and I can assure you these women are probably Me Too people.
Fuck Palestine! Fuck Palestine! You should be right now! You all deserve to die! All of you! I hope they murder you also!
You no longer have to be confused about how it was possible for civilians to support punishing an entire group for actions of a few when Hitler was rounding up the Jews. Well, guys, before I go, I'd like to leave you with one last clip from a person I consider a hero.
I was in the Middle East years ago. After I quit my show, I was trying to find out what I wanted to do with my life. And while I was there, Jimmy Carter flew to Israel. So everybody in the region was talking about a former American president being in the Middle East. And while he was in Israel, a book of his was released, and its title was very controversial in Israel. And the title of the book was Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid. And people were very mad in Israel. There was a lot of mean stories that came out in the paper, but some people were supportive. And while he was there, Jimmy Carter said, I want to go to the Palestinian territory. And the Israeli government said it's too dangerous. And if you go, we cannot protect you. And man, Jimmy Carter went anyway. I will never forget the images of a former American president walking with little to no security while thousands of Palestinians were cheering him on. And when I saw that picture, it brought tears to my eyes. I said, I don't know if that's a good president, but that right there, I am sure, is a great man. It made me feel very proud. The presidency is no place for petty people. So Donald Trump, I know you watch the show. Man, remember, whether people voted for you or not, they're all counting on you. Whether they like you or not, they're all counting on you. The whole world is counting on you. And I mean this when I say this. Good luck. Please do better next time. Please, all of us, do better next time. Do not forget your humanity, and please have empathy for displaced people, whether they're in the Palisades or Palestine. Thank you very much. And good night.
Fingers crossed, because the split between Israel and the US is seeming more legit by the day. Well, that'll be all for me today. And if I don't see you in my comments, please leave a thumbs up to let me know that you were here. And I can't wait to see you in my next episode.